USCHO.com. This is the USCHO Spotlight, a weekly podcast from U.S. College Hockey Online at USCHO.com, featuring conversations with college hockey coaches and players and journalists who cover the sport.
Welcome to USCHO Spotlight for Tuesday, February 11th, 2020. I'm Ed Trefzger alongside Jim Connelly. This episode is sponsored by the 2020 NCAA Frozen Four, April 9th and 11th in Detroit, Michigan. For tickets, visit ncaa.com/Frozen4. Jim, we're glad on this episode to welcome back one of our frequent guests.
And we are now joined by that frequent guest, and he is back at Michigan, a place that he was an assistant for a long time. Third year now as his head coach, Mel Pearson. Mel, you have your team playing some really good hockey right now. It has to feel good to be getting things together this time of year.
Thanks for having me on, guys. I think first and foremost, we're healthy. We had a lot of bumps and bruises early, but our team is playing well from the net out. That's been the biggest change is we've made, I think, good commitment to team defense, and because of that, we've been able to score more goals, and that's really the big difference is the goal scoring. Early in the year, we had trouble putting the puck in the net and lost a lot of low scoring one-goal games, but we got healthy and we got some guys putting the puck in the net, and that's been relieved a lot of pressure on our young goalie Strauss-Mann, and we've got depth. We don't have, some teams have a real good line or have these high-flying scores. We're doing it by our committee, I guess is the best word to put it. So, but I like the way we're playing. We're giving ourselves a chance here in the second half.
You mentioned injuries, and obviously that always can be difficult for a coach to manage. But you also just mentioned the depth and that you don't have that one go-to player, that one go-to line. When you're in a situation like that, how important is just getting that chemistry on the ice, and how much of the first half was just kind of figuring out some of that chemistry?
Great point. And that's the problem. It wasn't the injury so much as it was the timing. We had Will Lockwood miss 4 games, who's our captain. We had Jake Slaker, who's our leading scorer now, missed 3 to 4 games. Johnny Beecher was out. Cam York was out. So it just seemed like any time we tried to put a line together, a defensive pairing, bang, someone would get hurt, and it's starting all over again. And that's what it really was in the first half. And fortunately, after Christmas and the World Junior team, we got everybody back and had an opportunity to just stick with some lines and find that chemistry. And that's been really the ingredient for us having the success. And we found some good chemistry.
You mentioned a couple of young guys there in Cam York and Johnny Beecher, but I look at the top of your scoring right now, and you've got Slaker, you've got Lockwood, you've got a lot of seniors up there. And how nice is it to have some of that senior leadership on the ice, actually producing and kind of leading by example?
We're very fortunate to have a good core of seniors this year. And if you look at really any team, and for the most part, teams that have success, they've got some seniors and juniors that lead by example and show the way. And I think that's extremely important in this day and age in college hockey. And we're fortunate we have Lockwood and Slaker and Pashtajov, and then on the blue line we've got Luke Martin and Griffin Luce. So we've got some outstanding leadership and guys, who've been to the Frozen Four. All 5 of those guys have been to the Frozen Four for us. So I think it's extremely important, especially when you're getting to the end of the season and games become so critical.
And can you talk a little bit, you mentioned him a little bit, but can you talk about Strauss-Mann and how he's done just kind of taking the reign here? And a great record, 13-11-3, and then you look at his goals against, just over 2, and a save percentage over .930. Those are pretty good numbers for any goaltender. But what has his progression been like as this season has gone on?
Yeah, it's been fun to watch, and he was good last year as a freshman, but he was a freshman, and he had to learn a lot. And I think the beauty is just watching his progression from his freshman year to this year, and how he's grown. Not only as a goaltender, but just how he handles himself, how he takes care of himself, how he prepares for games, and it's nice to see him have success. And he's done a great job. Early in the year when we were struggling, he kept us in a lot of games and gave us a chance to win. when we weren't scoring, and he's continued that solid play in the second half. And at this point, he's our MVP by far. He's played extremely well. He's dialed in. He's a business school student here at Michigan, which is the top business school in the U.S., and he's a straight A student. The kid he's a consummate student athlete. He's what you're looking for, and I couldn't be more proud of him and happy for him.
You're only a couple of seasons away from the Frozen Four, as you mentioned, and actually a year with 3 members of the Big Ten in there. Looking back on that and looking at how tight the Big Ten is now, what kind of challenges are there playing in a competitive league like that, and maybe even overall in college hockey, how difficult it has become? Well, it has become extremely difficult. Right now, anybody from the number 1 team in the country to number 60, anybody can beat anybody any given night. If you don't show up and have, your best game or close to your best game, the parity in college hockey has never been better. And in my view, I've been doing it for almost 40 years now, and it's just incredible the amount of players and where they're coming from. You throw in a couple rule changes as far as grad transfers and players being able to transfer now a little bit more freely without having to sit out. It's really changed the landscape. So it's become as competitive as ever on the recruiting trail, and it's become as competitive as ever on the ice. But the Big Ten, we just played Wisconsin. They have 3 first-round NHL draft choices on their picks on their team, and they got a 4th. Dylan Holloway is going to be an NHL draft pick this year, first rounder. So the amount of talent that you're seeing every night in the Big Ten is incredible. It's awesome hockey. But unfortunately, we're just beating each other up. We don't get any separation with anybody. It makes it very difficult to move up in the pairwise or to get teams very high. I was reminded of what a special place Yost Ice Arena is the other night when I saw a video of your team coming up the steps to the dressing room, which reminded me that it's in some ways a little bit of a quirky building. I was saying to Jim before we got on the line with you that in some ways it's sort of like the Fenway Park of college hockey in that it's kind of a jewel, but also has some oddities about it. And you're only a few years after a pretty nice renovation too. For people who haven't been there, for your team and for fans who come there, what is special about Yost Ice Arena? Well, you've kept the traditions, I think, of the reason college athletics was I guess brought about. It's a great venue. You don't have all this sterile type atmosphere. People are right on top of each other. It's a very quirky building, and it was never intended to be an ice rink. Obviously, it's a field house. They played basketball in here until 1974, and it was converted to an ice arena. There's been a couple of real nice renovations, actually, to make it a little more fan-friendly for some people. And then, obviously, the player amenities, we had to upgrade that. But on a game night, I've been to North Dakota, and I've been to BU and BC and Wisconsin and Penn State with a new building, and nothing against any of those buildings. But just for that true feel, that, I guess the character, when you first walk in the doors at Yost, something just grabs you and you walk out in the rink, and it's not the fanciest place, but I don't know if you'd want to be anywhere else on a game night. And then we hear that constantly from opposing teams and players that play here. What is such a neat and fun environment Yost Ice Arena it is. And I think that's what makes it so special. It's a little bit of a throwback to, the old days with a little bit of renovation and a little bit of pumped in music, but it's still the band and the children of Yost and the fans and everything that makes it just a special venue to play. And we're very fortunate to be able to play here. More with Michigan head coach Mel Pearson in a moment. First, a word from our sponsor, the NCAA Frozen Four, April 9th and 11th in Detroit.
This is the USCHO Spotlight, a weekly podcast from U.S. College Hockey Online.
Every time you show up, every time you make your presence heard, whether you clap your hands or stomp your feet, lead the chant or join the chorus. However you choose to be a fan, you make the game. The NCAA Frozen Four, April 9th and 11th at Little Caesars Arena in Detroit. Visit ncaa.com/Frozen4 to get your tickets today.
This is USCHO Spotlight. More now with Michigan head coach Mel Pearson. You served for several years on the Division I men's ice hockey committee, and I've talked to a couple of people who are on there now. One of the things that's going to be a challenge is trying to find a way to have a uniform overtime policy across all 6 leagues and even independents. Do you have any thoughts on how that might work and how it's worked for you in the Big Ten with a 3-on-3 and shootout?
Well, I wish we could get to, especially for Division I. I just took a survey yesterday from the NCAA hockey committee, and I think the women Division I and 3 women, they should be able to have their own rules and figure out how they want to do that, as should the Division III men. But for Division I hockey, I would like to see us get to a common overtime scenario. And I'm a big proponent, and our league is as coaches, to go to the NHL model, just because of the length of games, because the excitement that it brings. I guess I've been in 3 of them this year so far, the 3-on-3 overtimes and then the shootouts. And they're not easy on the coach, but as far as the players and the fans, just seeing it and experience it, they're tremendous. I think the big thing we have to figure out is just the pair wise and how does a game end after 60 minutes or so, or can we play a 5-minute overtime and then, like we do in the Big Ten, go to 3-on-3 and then a sudden death shootout. But I think, this day and age, if we can get to, I would prefer the NHL model, and I think the Big Ten would. If we can't get to that, I'd like to keep the 5 minutes and then, like we do, the 3-on-3 and then the sudden death shootout. We're in the entertainment business, guys, and I think we've got to entertain these fans, and we have to watch a little bit about the length of the games. I mean, we're talking about trying to keep a great atmosphere, an in-house atmosphere, and I know there's an article not too long ago talking about what's going on in college athletics with attendance. So I think we've got to be careful. I think we have to understand what our fans want, and anything that we can attract the fans and the in-house games to be important. I think that's something that we need to look at. So I'm a big proponent of the NHL model. That's just how I feel about it. And maybe a few years ago I wasn't, but I think we have to look beyond our own teams and our own leagues and try to get to somewhere for college hockey. We're the only sport, I think, that has different overtime. Like college football went to their overtime. I think it's been great for them.
One of the things that I've noticed getting to see a bit more 3-on-3 is how different a game it is from an X's and O's standpoint. How much do you have to prepare for that? And really, what makes it different than when you're playing 5-on-5?
Well, obviously the amount of ice there, and there's a lot more room to operate, and you see it with your skilled players. Our last one was at Penn State, and it was wild. We don't practice 3-on-3 maybe once every 2 weeks. We just don't get involved in those games enough to really spend as much time. There's so many other things we need to work on. So, but just the excitement. I mean, you're going to see a 2-on-1 coming down one end, and all of a sudden the guy's shot goes wide, and guess what? It's a 2-on-1 or 3-on-1 the other way. It just really opens up the offensive part of the game, and I think more so in college than even the NHL level. But you see the skill, you see the speed, you see the excitement, which I think is all good for college hockey.
We're talking with Mel Pearson, head coach of Michigan, and this weekend coming up, your rival Michigan State. You'll head up to East Lansing on Friday night, and then Monday, a special game you'll play at Little Caesars Arena. The Duel in the D is what they're calling it, and kind of maybe a preview a little bit of what the building and atmosphere could be like for a Frozen Four. I'll start with Michigan State and just the rivalry that is there. I come from the East Coast where it's BCBU or Northeastern BU, and we've seen those the last couple of Monday nights at the Beanpot play out. But you're going to do this. You'll put it on a pretty big stage on Monday. What is it like to get into that environment where it's a packed house and you have two schools that really have some true animosity on the ice for each other?
Well, you're right, and it's awesome. Our players really enjoy it. To be able to go in and play in an NHL building and Little Caesars, it's a tremendous building. It's new. They've done a great job there. It's huge. But what I like about it is these games is you have half people there from Michigan State and half from Michigan. So whenever something's going on, whether there's a goal scored, a penalty, whatever, they're always going back and forth at each other, which creates an awesome environment. Because a lot of times you play a home game, there's just your home fans. So this way you get a little bit of both. And we've had a great rivalry with Michigan State. The games have been intense. Obviously we're both, I think what makes it even more of an interesting game this year is we're both fighting for a Big Ten championship. We're 2 games out of first place, which is 6 points, and they're right there. They're less than a game out. So it just adds to the whole rivalry and the tense rivalry. And we're 60 miles away. We've got big time football that go at it every year. You've got the basketball that we just played Saturday, Michigan and Michigan State, and you got the hockey. I mean, it just is it's an intense. You're either Michigan in the state of Michigan, you're either Michigan or Michigan State. There's no in between, and it's awesome. And you get to go out on the ice and you get to battle. And in the city of Detroit, where we call it Hockey Town here, and it's just going to be a great game. Obviously, we play Friday on Valentine's Day, and I'll just tell you guys, there won't be any hugs and kisses going on up in East Lansing. So we're looking to have a great weekend with them. It's been a great rivalry, very intense, and we can't wait to get after it on Friday night and then go down to Detroit and settle things down there.
Rivalry aside, what has the X's and O's become like for this game? I mean, people know Michigan State this year. They know a goaltender, but this team's a lot more than just a great goaltender. What's the dangers that you're going to have to deal with this weekend with Michigan State?
Well, the top line's as good as any line in college hockey. Patrick Kodorenko and Mitch Lewandowski. Obviously, the third guy from that line last year. Just watch him play the other night for the Red Wings, Tara Hirose. So, but those 2 guys have picked it up right where they let off, Lewandowski and Kodorenko. Really good players. We're going to have to make sure that we shut them down. Strong power play. That's always been the case the last few years. And then they grind it out. They play very staunch defensively. We're going to have to find some cracks in that armor and try to exploit that. Put some pressure on that defense and force them to have to play in their zone without the puck. I think those are the real keys to the game. And the other thing is play with discipline. You have to play with controlled emotion, because these will be emotional games, and you don't want to cross that line or get over the edge. You just have to play hard, play fast, play quick, but play whistle to whistle.
Well, you mentioned it earlier, only 2 points separates your team, which is down in 6th place, but very reachable to get into that first place spot in the Big Ten. It is a tight, packed race in the Big Ten. 3 weekends left for your Michigan squad. It should be exciting, especially when given the rivalry this weekend. And Mel Pearson, we always enjoy talking to you. Thanks so much for taking some time today to join us, and best of luck this weekend and obviously the rest of the way.
Well, thanks, guys. It's always great to be on with you and talk college hockey. So keep up the good job.
Jim, Mel Pearson's been one of our favorite guests over the years. Always great to talk to him and get his insights going back to his time at Michigan Tech and his time on the NCAA committee. The committee is going to be facing something with overtimes, and it was interesting to hear him advocate for the NHL style of 3-on-3 overtime. That seems to be getting some momentum around college hockey.
It certainly does. And I, for one, really hope that is the path that is chosen. I don't think there's a need to play 5-on-5 before you go to 3-on-3. It just makes the night that much longer. I think you can also, I come from the Beanpot the last 2 Mondays where it's hard to explain that teams tied games and yet a champion was crowned. It's so confusing for many people. I think you simplify it. If you want to have 20-minute overtimes in tournaments, go ahead, do that. put the result down as 20-minute overtime as a win or a loss. That's simple. And then on top of that, just figure out a point structure that works. Don't confuse people. You don't need 4 or 5 different leagues with different ways of recording their standings. You don't need a totally separate standing for the pairwise rankings. Just somebody come up and agree and find a way to make a fair point structure that at least a majority of coaches can get behind. Uniform across the board, and the confusion right now.
You know, it's pretty exciting as we wrap up to think about Michigan and Michigan State both playing very well, both having meaningful games and great atmospheres coming up this weekend.
Yeah, and I think, especially Monday being down at Little Caesars Arena and a very big packed house I expect for that. And that's pretty special. When you play in those big buildings, and as Mel Pearson was kind of noting, the fact that it's not really a home game. You have, whatever it is, 9,000 fans from one team, maybe 9,000 from the other team. So every time a goal is scored, you have some great excitement in the building. I think that is just an atmosphere that's fun to create. Obviously, Michigan, they gave up a home game to do that. And I think that that's something that's pretty special. I'm glad that you can put events on like this, and I think it'll be a big success for the city of Detroit.
And you know what? You're absolutely right when you talk about Michigan being a feared team right now in the Big Ten. If you had to pick a dark horse, and it's hard to pick a team 2 points out of first place as a dark horse, but if you had to pick a dark horse, you couldn't go very wrong in picking the Michigan Wolverines.
Yeah, I mean, numbers 7-2-1 since they came back from break, 6-1-1 in their last 8 Big Ten games. I mean, this is a team that's hot, and when you're in a situation we've seen in Hockey East where if you're getting points and you're getting 6 points on a weekend, or you're getting 5 points, or even 4 out of 6 on a weekend, you're making progress this time of year. It's very hard to sweep weekends. Michigan has done that of late, and they've moved from a team that nobody was talking about a month and a half ago to somebody that's now 2 games out of first place in the Big Ten standings.
Well, that'll do it for this episode of USCHO Spotlight. We've been sponsored on this episode by the NCAA Frozen 4, April 9th and 11th in Detroit. For tickets, visit ncaa.com/Frozen4. For Jim Connelly, I'm Ed Trefzger, and we'll catch you next time.
This has been the USCHO Spotlight, a production of U.S. College Hockey Online. Visit uscho.com/podcasts to listen or subscribe.